Emma had always believed that God listened when she prayed. She didn't believe that every prayer would be answered immediately, but she believed that God never ignored a sincere heart. Her faith had carried her through difficult seasons before, but nothing had prepared her for the day Daniel walked away. Their marriage had once been simple and happy. They didn't have much money, but they laughed together, shared their dreams, and believed they could face anything as long as they had each other. Then Daniel lost his job. At first, he told Emma it was temporary. "I'll find something soon," he promised. But weeks passed, and nothing changed. Daniel began coming home late. He became quiet during dinner and stopped talking about his day. Emma could feel the distance growing between them. One night, she gently asked, "Daniel, what are you hiding from me?" "Nothing. I know something is wrong." Daniel looked away. "I'm just tired." Emma reached for his hand. "You don't have to carry everything alone." But Daniel couldn't tell her the truth. He had borrowed money. The bills were increasing. He felt ashamed that he couldn't provide for their home. Instead of asking Emma for help, he slowly convinced himself that she would be better without him. One rainy evening, Emma came downstairs and saw Daniel standing beside the front door with a small suitcase. Her heart immediately sank. "Daniel?" He turned around. "I need to go." Emma stared at him. "Where?" "I don't know." "Why?" He looked down. "I've failed you." Emma stepped closer. "You haven't failed me." "I have." "No, you lost a job." "That's not the end of our life." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." But Daniel couldn't. He picked up his suitcase. "I'm sorry." Then he walked out into the rain. Emma stood at the doorway, watching until he disappeared. She waited for him to turn around. He never did. The first few weeks were painful. Emma expected Daniel to call. She checked her phone constantly. Every unknown number made her heart jump. But Daniel didn't call. 1 month passed. Then 2. Then 6. Eventually, 8 months had gone by. Emma learned how to eat dinner alone. She learned how to sleep on one side of the bed. She learned how to smile when people asked if she was okay. But at night, when nobody could see her, she cried. She still loved Daniel. That was the hardest part. She didn't know whether to keep hoping or finally let go. Every night, Emma prayed, "God, please bring him home." Other nights, she could only whisper his name. She began to wonder if God was silent because the answer was no. Maybe she needed to accept it. One Thursday night, Emma finally broke down. She knelt beside her bed, holding an old Bible against her chest. "God, I don't know what to do anymore." Tears ran down her face. "I've waited. I've tried to forgive." She took a shaky breath. She closed her eyes. She whispered. Emma remained on her knees for several minutes. Nothing happened. The room stayed silent. There was no sudden voice, no extraordinary feeling, only the sound of rain against the window. Eventually, Emma wiped her face. "Even if you don't answer me tonight, I will try to trust you." She went to bed. The next morning, Emma woke before sunrise. She walked downstairs and headed toward the front door. Then she noticed something on the porch. A small brown envelope. She stopped. Her name was written across it. Emma slowly opened the door. She looked down the street. Nobody was there. No car was leaving. No footsteps. Nothing. She picked up the envelope and carried it inside. Emma placed the envelope on the kitchen table. For a moment, she was afraid to open it. Finally, she carefully tore it open. An old photograph slipped into her hands. Emma gasped. It was her and Daniel. Their first Christmas together. They were standing beneath a string of lights, smiling at each other. Emma remembered everything about that night. They had barely enough money for food. Their Christmas tree was tiny. Their decorations were handmade. Daniel had accidentally burned the cookies. They had laughed until they cried. Emma turned the photograph over. Her heart stopped. 6 words were written on the back. "Don't give up on what God began." She recognized the handwriting immediately. Daniel's. Emma sat down. Her hands were trembling. How? She stared at the photograph. How did this get here? And why had it arrived the morning after she had begged God for a sign? Emma kept the photograph beside her all day. She called Daniel. His phone went to voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. That evening, someone knocked at the door. When Emma opened it, she saw Daniel's mother. "Mrs. Carter?" The older woman looked nervous. "Can I come in?" Emma stepped aside. They sat in the living room. Mrs. Carter looked at the photograph. "You received it?" Emma stared at her. "You knew about this?" "Yes." "Did Daniel send it?" "He gave it to me several weeks ago." Emma's eyes widened. "Then how did it get here?" Mrs. Carter shook her head. "I don't know." Emma looked confused. "What is going on?" Mrs. Carter took a deep breath. "There is something Daniel never told you." She began explaining. Daniel had lost his job 3 months before he left. He had tried to find another one but failed. The bills continued arriving. He had borrowed money and fallen deeper into debt. He became terrified. He thought he had failed as a husband, Mrs. Carter said. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I told him I didn't care about money." "I know." "I told him we could start over." "I know." "Then why didn't he believe me?" Mrs. Carter looked down. "Because sometimes shame becomes louder than love." Emma couldn't speak. For 8 months, she had believed Daniel left because he no longer wanted her. Now she realized that he had been fighting something inside himself. Mrs. Carter reached into her purse. "There is one more thing." She gave Emma a folded letter. Emma recognized Daniel's handwriting. She opened it. Daniel wrote about the night he left. He admitted that he had been afraid. He wrote that he regretted walking away. He wrote that every day without Emma reminded him of how much she meant to him. Then Emma read the final lines. "I don't know if you can forgive me. I don't know if I deserve another chance. But I still love you. Leaving you never meant that my love disappeared." Emma pressed the letter to her heart. She cried. Mrs. Carter sat quietly beside her. After several minutes, Emma whispered, "Where is he?" "He's working in another city." "Is he okay?" "He's trying to rebuild his life." Emma looked at the photograph again. Something inside her had changed. She didn't suddenly know what the future would bring, but she knew she needed to see Daniel. 3 days later, Emma drove to the city where Daniel was living. The entire journey was filled with questions. What if he didn't want her? What if he had changed? What if seeing him reopened every wound? When she arrived at his apartment, she stayed inside the car for almost 20 minutes. She looked at the photograph. Then she looked toward the building. Finally, she whispered, "God, I don't know what happens next, but please give me courage." She stepped out. Her hands were cold. She walked to the door. Then she knocked. The door opened. Daniel stood there. For several seconds, neither of them moved. He looked surprised. "Emma?" She nodded. His eyes immediately filled with tears. "You came." Emma held out the photograph. "I found this at my door." Daniel looked at it. His face changed. "I wanted you to have it." "Why?" "Because I wanted you to remember who we were before fear took over." Emma swallowed. "You should have told me." "I know." "You should have trusted me." "I know." "You hurt me." Daniel lowered his head. "I know." Then he whispered, "I am so sorry." Emma's tears finally fell. They talked for hours. Daniel told her about his fear, his debt, his loneliness, and his shame. Emma told him about the nights she couldn't sleep. She told him about waiting for his phone call. She told him how angry she had become. Most importantly, she told him that leaving without explaining had broken something inside her. Daniel listened. He didn't defend himself. He simply said, "You deserved better." Emma looked at him. "Maybe we both deserve a chance to become better." Daniel began to cry. Emma reached for his hand. "I can't promise that everything will be the same. I don't expect it to be. I can't erase the past. I don't want you to." She took a deep breath. "But maybe we can start again." For the first time in 8 months, they embraced. Their reunion wasn't a fairy tale. There was no instant healing. They still had financial problems. They still had painful memories. Trust didn't return in one day. But they decided to rebuild slowly. Daniel found steady work and began being honest about his struggles. Emma learned that forgiveness didn't mean pretending she had never been hurt. They learned to talk instead of staying silent. They learned to ask for help instead of carrying everything alone. And slowly, their home began to feel like home again. One evening, Emma placed the old photograph beside her bed. She looked at it and smiled. Then she knelt down. This time, she didn't ask for anything. She simply whispered, "Thank you, God." The next morning, Emma opened her front door. The sunlight was soft. The street was quiet. She stepped onto the porch. Then she noticed something on the old wooden railing. 2 small words had been carved into it. "Keep believing." Emma touched the words. Tears filled her eyes. She didn't know exactly who had carved them, but she didn't need to. She finally understood what God had been teaching her. The sign wasn't a promise that life would become perfect. It was a reminder that God had never abandoned her. Sometimes He answers through a person. Sometimes through a letter. Sometimes through an old photograph. Sometimes through a door that opens when you thought it would stay closed forever. And sometimes when you cannot see what He is doing. Faith simply means taking another step. Emma looked toward the sky. "I couldn't see you," she whispered. "But you were there." She walked back inside. Her life wasn't perfect. Her marriage still needed care. Her future was still uncertain. But her heart was no longer filled with hopelessness. She had learned that silence doesn't mean God has stopped listening. Sometimes He is working quietly behind the scenes, preparing an answer we cannot yet see. And sometimes the sign we desperately ask for doesn't fall from the sky. Sometimes it is waiting right outside our door. All we have to do is open it